Did you know that devil fruits can work underwater? Or that the oldest known devil fruit is over 800 years old? Or that Blackbeard is not the only person to have ever used more than one devil fruit power at the same time? Well, today we're gonna learn all the deepest, darkest secrets of devil fruits as we dive down the devil fruit iceberg, going from the most surface level facts that most fans should know, like the fact that eating 2 devil fruits will literally fracture your body, to the unbelievably twisted lore hidden at the deepest levels, like the theory that next to Luffy's sun god Nika fruit, there are actually 3 other god fruits in One Piece that were all also foreshadowed during the Skypiea arc. But we're gonna kick things off with tier level 1, or the tip of the iceberg, where we're gonna take a look at our very first introduction to devil fruits in the story. Because after Child Luffy ate this mysterious fruit, his friend and mentor Red Hair Shanks tells us that Luffy just ate the fruit of the devil, which he also calls one of the secret treasures of the sea. You eat the fruit, you gain a power, and the only downside really is that you won't ever be able to swim again. So far, pretty easy to follow, right? Well, just wait until we go further down a few tiers to see just how complicated devil fruits actually get. But surprisingly, devil fruits are actually really rare in the One Piece world overall, which is kind of easy to forget. Because even though we've by now seen over 100 different powers throughout the story, most of the world actually thinks that these fruits aren't even real and that they're just some sort of myth or legend. I mean, even an uber powerful country of warriors like Wano doesn't even know about devil fruits and just considers the powers to be some sort of magic, jutsu, or wizardry. Now, of course, the devil fruits are more common in the Grand Line, where most of the story of One Piece takes actually place, but overall they do remain more myth than reality for most of the One Piece world. And unfortunately, this misunderstanding can actually lead to a lot of discrimination and cruelty, which is exactly what happened to our beloved Straw Hat archaeologist Nika Robin when she was a kid. And now we simply can't go any further without mentioning the classic appearance of the devil fruit as well, because these magical fruits basically look like any other ordinary fruit except for one major difference. A devil fruit could be strawberries, apples, oranges, or really any type of fruit, but no matter what, every single devil fruit will have these distinctive swirl patterns on its surface. In fact, this is literally the only way to ever tell that a fruit has now been transformed into a devil fruit before you actually take a bite and gain those powers of that fruit. And once you actually do take that bite, you will instantly gain the powers of that devil fruit, along with experiencing the shockingly horrible taste that devil fruits are very well known for. Yeah, these things seem to taste absolutely nasty. Now, once you actually do take a bite of the fruit, there's actually no one else in the entire world that will have the exact same power. That's right, so no multiple fire fruit users, no twin earthquake users, just one each in the entire world. Now, those are the real basics of devil fruit, and I'm sure if you've watched One Piece at all ever, then you probably already knew most of that. But let's say that you've just eaten a devil fruit, experienced that really awful taste, and now you've been blessed, or cursed I guess, with a certain unique power. Well, that power will fall into one of 3 categories, which I'll break down for you right here. The first and most common category of devil fruits are zone fruits. And to put it really simply, this category of devil fruit allows the user to transform into an animal, as a result usually granting them also an immense boost in strength and stamina. For example, you can become a leopard, a falcon, or some more insane legendary creatures that we'll discuss in just a few moments a little bit deeper down. But on top of your just regular animal transformation, every zone fruit user can also transform into a so-called hybrid human-animal form, like this leopard man right here. Now, this special hybrid form is usually said to be a zone user's strongest form, which kind of was true for a while, but we will talk about even stronger zone transformations in level 2. But next up, we have our second basic devil fruit category, which is logia fruits. Now, this fruit category allows users to turn into an element as well as generate seemingly limitless amounts of that same element as well. For example, we have the magma logia and the lightning logia, and while most of these fruits are elements technically, we do have some recent examples that suggest that it can be really any sort of substance, like this swamp logia user or this forest logia fruit user as well. And these are pretty straightforward powers, but you should know that these powers were long considered to be the absolutely most powerful ones, because logia fruit users basically become absolutely untouchable for any normal attack. A great example here is when Luffy tried to punch this sand logia user, his punches literally just went right through his body. Now, there are some exceptions here that allow characters to break this rule, but again, we'll discuss this in lower tiers a little bit later. And this already brings us to the last of our 3 basic types, which is paramecia devil fruits. Now, this category of devil fruits includes basically everything else that doesn't fit in the other 2. This is kind of a mixed bag of powers that are left up to Oda Sensei's imagination, but usually fall into 3 general subcategories. First, there are paramecias, which use the user's body in some sort of way, such as turning into rubber, turning into blades, or even allowing you to become invisible. The second subcategory here allows the user to produce some sort of substance, such is the case with the string fruit user, 𝗏𝗏 here, who can create an endless amount of strings or deadly poison like the warden of the underwater prison Impel Down. And the third main subcategory of paramecia fruits are paramecia fruits that manipulate the environment or other people in some shape or form. A great example here is the Admiral Fujitora, who can affect gravity around him, which allows him to do things like pull down meteors from space. Which honestly maybe is not a great example because it's such a broken ability by itself. But now that we've already mentioned how devil fruit users lose the ability to swim, like they literally become absolutely helpless and go limp when they're submerged in water, but there is one other major drawback of devil fruits that most people don't talk about, and that is the deadly reality that once you eat a devil fruit, you cannot ever eat another one or you will die. At least that is what basically everyone in the world believes. Even the world government's secret agents and scientists seem to have proven or at least be convinced of that fact. They explain to us that if someone were to eat a second fruit, their body would fracture until there is nothing left of it. Meaning that if you are a devil fruit user, you better watch out the next time you take a bite of any fruit or a fruit salad, because I mean, that's a great way to actually kill any devil fruit user by just sneaking in a second devil fruit in their lunch. Now, of course, there's the theory that this may all just be a giant lying conspiracy, but we will save that very juicy drama for tier number 4. And I really can't wait to get to that because I, for one, sure love myself some really crazy devil fruit conspiracy theories, which we will have quite a lot of later down in this video. Now, that being said though, even just one devil fruit ability on its own is without a doubt definitely powerful enough for even the strongest characters in the world. In fact, as you probably know, most of the top tier fighters in the One Piece world possess some sort of devil fruit. For example, the strongest pirates in the world, like the Emperors of the Sea, do have devil fruit powers, as do basically all of the strongest marines, with some notable exceptions. However, just because you eat a fruit doesn't mean you are instantly and immediately a super powerful fighter. I think we often forget this, but just like with anything else, a devil fruit user still has to train hard with their fruit for many years in order to truly master its powers. I mean, just look at poor kid Luffy here, who started out literally punching himself in the face with his powers. Luckily though, he was then able to train for some years and was easily able to knock out sea monsters by the time that he was then a teenager, about 7 or 8 years later. And now, of course, we can't dive even deeper beneath the surface of devil fruits without discussing the single greatest mystery still remaining about any of these mysterious powers, which of course is the question, where in the world did devil fruits come from to begin with? Now, obviously, this is one of the biggest mysteries in the entire story of One Piece, and even to this day, we still don't have a clear answer to this. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that we don't have some crazy and spicy theories, and in each tier going forward, we will discuss increasingly more mind-blowing ideas about the origins of devil fruit. But for the starting tier 1 devil fruit origin theory, the earliest devil fruit lore in the story comes once again from Red Hair Shanks. In fact, going all the way back to chapter 1, he called Luffy's devil fruit the fruit of the devil and a secret treasure of the sea, but we also get more of these early myths in chapter 19, where he's talking to a young Buggy the Clown. In that very same chapter, these 2 young pirates of the Roger crew are discussing a devil fruit that their crew recently found, and in this panel right here, Shanks says that they say that the devil fruit was enchanted by sea devils and that the sea turns against them. In other words, there exists some mythical sea devils who have cursed these fruits, and now the sea hates anyone who decides to eat one. Or I guess even accidentally eats one. unlike Luffy or poor Buggy here, which is pretty simple and straightforward as an origin story, and this seems to be the basic lore that most of the One Piece world actually believes in. That being said though, things do get way more complicated later on in the story, so we'll discuss more ideas regarding their true nature coming up soon. With that bit of lore out of the way though, let's dive now below the surface into the Devil Fruit Iceberg's tier number 2, which basically now includes many lesser known facts and simple theories regarding devil fruits. Basically, you wouldn't know these if you were just a really casual fan. Starting with something that you've probably never really thought about, because have you ever wondered why the fire fruit user's pants don't burst into flames? Or why do this sandy warlord suit not crumble into dust every time he uses his drying powers? Well, that is because the author of One Piece long ago decided that devil fruit abilities will always extend to the user's clothing for one very simple reason. If they didn't, we would have a lot, and I mean a lot, of naked devil fruit users running around every single time anyone used any of their powers. And come on, don't try to hide it. I do know that some of you definitely might actually prefer that, but it was just never gonna be a thing in the story made for all ages and targeted at younger boys at the beginning. But with all of our devil fruit users properly covered up and all family jewels safely stored away, well, mostly that is, there is one other common misconception about devil fruit users and their one major weakness. Now, if you haven't dozed away at this point in the video already, which I really hope you haven't, you will remember that we've already mentioned that devil fruit users become useless when submerged underwater, but many fans are often confused about the exact amount of water that it actually takes in order to make them weak. Like, would a splash of water from a cup be enough to make Luffy lose all his epic powers? How about a mild rainfall on an island? And does it have to be seawater for devil fruit users to lose their powers? Well, turns out Oda actually did answer all of these questions in one of his question corners when he said that a devil fruit user has to be about halfway submerged for them in order to lose all of their energy. And interestingly enough, this actually includes any type of water, including fresh water, bath water, or even sea clouds, as Luffy discovered in 𝗙𝗏𝗄. On the other hand, if they're mostly above water, like 51% of their body, like Luffy in the bathtub here, then they will be just perfectly fine. Now, you may not have realized this, but there are actually some devil fruits out there that have a major advantage over all the other ones, and that's because the ability to fly gives a person a major advantage in so many different areas. Seriously, think about it. It's good for fighting, it's good for mobility, and even just traveling from place to place in a world filled with water. But apparently, this ability is rare enough in the One Piece world that it was even discussed by this guy right here when he claimed that there were only 5 devil fruits in the entire world that would allow you to fly. And of course, it didn't take long that this fact was proven to be completely false, as Oda added in more and more fruits that gave people the ability to fly. Plus, most strong characters can basically fly anyways, or at least jump absurdly high with their advanced martial art techniques and bodies. Basically making this the very first instance of devil fruit lore that we got early on in the story that was later on disproven. But speaking of unique devil fruit abilities, there are multiple subcategories of Zoan devil fruits as well. Now, these very special subcategories grant their users extra abilities outside of just the regular Zoan transformations and physical stat boosts. The first of these are carnivorous zones, which basically includes any animal that is a hunter or a meat eater, such as the leopard and the wolf devil fruits. And turns out that due to the bloodthirsty nature of these animals, these devil fruit users get an extra boost in their aggression and fighting physical capabilities as well. So sorry Giraffe Man, but no extra bonus stats for you, I guess. However, even carnivorous zoans are nothing compared to this next subgroup of zoans who played a major role during the Wano arc. Because while 90% of Zoan fruits are limited to just regular animals that are out there in the world, there is a whole subcategory of ancient zones, which includes Ice Age creatures like the mammoth and the saber-toothed tiger, plus even older creatures like dinosaurs like this Allosaurus right here. And these ancient zones get an even bigger boost in strength, speed, and recovery and endurance than just regular zones would get as well. Which coincidentally is exactly why the Emperor of the Sea Kaido was so very eager to collect as many of the fruits for his crew as possible. In fact, Oda also recently revealed a new warlord that was defeated by Ace who was out there collecting ancient fruits, potentially for Kaido. That's something we just don't know. But what's probably even crazier though is that Kaido's obsession with zone type devil fruits actually led to the creation of a whole new type of devil fruit as well. And of course here we're talking about the artificial smile devil fruits, which is actually just the first of many types of artificial devil fruits that we're gonna discuss throughout this video. Now essentially these fruits are made by combining animal DNA with a mysterious chemical known as SAD or SAT. This chemical mixture is then fed to trees that will then grow these artificial smile devil fruits. Now we saw this entire process unfold in Dressrosa, but we never knew the true horror that these fruits would create until the Wano arc, when we learned that only 10% of these fruits are actually useful, meaning that the other 90% of these fruits leave you with a consequence that might be even worse than death. Because for these very unfortunate people, the bad smile devil fruits completely remove any ability to express any negative emotions. And while at first that may sound not that bad, it also means you cannot cry when you feel sad. All you can do ever is laugh, laugh, and laugh. Like, sheesh, what a really demonic creation that is. And that's not even the worst part though, because even if you do eat a successful smile fruit, and successful in big quotation marks, you don't actually get a real zone fruit power. Instead, you are permanently left with some sort of animal hybrid part attached to some part of your body, which has honestly led to some of the most grotesque but also hilarious characters in the story. I'm looking at you, Hamlet and Fortrix, like, man, I can't get over how silly some of these look. But the worst part is that you can even get a lion head on your belly that will punch you in your own balls, and if that isn't diabolical, then I really don't know what is. Like, sounds funny, but think about it and then, you know, get back to me. Seriously, even if the odds were better, who would even want these powers? But back to real devil fruits now, because while you may not have realized how special ancient zones were, they are not even the most powerful type of zone fruit out there. And we will get to that subcategory down in tier level 3, but there's actually a whole other separate category of devil fruit that we haven't even discussed yet at all. And this devil fruit is so broken, it was initially called a logia fruit, but then Oda just decided to make a brand new subcategory of devil fruit called the special paramecias. And of course, the fruit that he did this for was the mochi mochi no mi, which was eaten by everyone's favorite donut lover, Katakuri. Now, the reason that this fruit is so very special and stands out is that it allows its user to both produce mochi, and it also affects your own body, as in turning it into mochi. Now, usually paramecias, as we talked about earlier, only let you do one or the other, which is why this is such a uniquely special fruit. And even on the surface, it basically seems to be a logia fruit. Katakuri's ability does not make him unhittable by default like any logia devil fruit would actually do. Though, truly, this fruit is a one-of-a-kind devil fruit out there. Sadly enough though, no one else can have any of these special powers while Katakuri is alive, but for the longest time, we didn't really know why there was only one type of each devil fruit. In fact, this remained a big mystery until we reached Dressrosa in the second half of the story, and we saw a real devil fruit be reincarnated for the very first time in the story. Because when Luffy's brother Ace died in Marineford, his fire devil fruit powers were reborn into a fruit somewhere else in the world, and we saw exactly how this process works right here when we learned that when a devil fruit user dies, the soul or devil inside it that contains the powers passes from the person into a new fruit. And we actually saw this happen during the Punk Hazard arc, where when this giant mass of poison died, its devil fruit power transferred into a nearby fruit as well. Now, we still aren't quite sure if it's just any random fruit nearby, like the closest fruit, or if it has to be a very specific type of fruit, but that devil then lives in the fruit until someone else is lucky or unlucky enough to take a bite and then gain the new abilities again. In other words, this is is the exact process in how devil fruits are constantly reborn into the world and why there can only ever be one of that power at any given time. And yet there's one group of people that seems to know way more about this process than anyone else. Because throughout the story, we have seen that the Emperor Blackbeard and his crew are out there hunting for devil fruits by seemingly carrying around sacks of fruit on their back and killing devil fruit users to kind of get their fruit powers. So it does seem like they do know way more about this mysterious process than we do, for now at least. But now, one thing that you've most likely seen and realized in the story but never maybe really thought about is that devil fruits can also affect weapons and artificial body parts. For example, the former world's strongest man Whitebeard frequently infused his his spear thingy with his tremor powers to unleash devastating shockwaves that could literally break entire islands. On top of that, weapons can also change size alongside devil fruit transformations, as we see for example with one of Kaido's top fighters when his sword grew to match his much larger dinosaur hybrid form as well. Kinda makes you wonder how Zoro feels when he's facing down a sword that's bigger than his entire body. Now, what you won't believe though is that even though we've already talked about a ton of devil fruit powers by now, there is no way we can ever cover all of them. In fact, there are 152 devil fruits in the current story, with more that are sure to be added later on. Though I actually did make a video about all of them. But out of all of these fruits, there are only 2 out there that we don't actually know what typing they are. One of these powers belongs to Lafitte, who is one of Blackbeard's Titanic captains, and his use of these mysterious angel wings right here has never actually been categorized. Though logically, we would assume that it must be some kind of Zoan fruit. Now, the second uncategorized fruit comes from one of the most recently introduced devil fruits, with Prince Gruz of the Special Marine Division sword. His ability to manipulate clay sure seems like a paramecia ability to me, but for now it remains unconfirmed and it could just be a logia power as well. Okay, but now so far in tier level 2, we have discussed many lesser known facts and things that most casual fans might have missed out on, but now it's time to jump into real theory territory as we talk about some pretty straightforward and widely accepted theories regarding devil fruits. Starting off pretty strong, I think, with a theory involving Trafalgar Law's 𝗗𝗘𝗓𝗜𝗟. Now, in case you don't know, this is one of the most broken devil fruits in the entire story, which basically allows Law to create this massive fear-shaped room and basically do whatever he wants inside of it. He can slice you into pieces, shock you, swap places with anything, even swap personalities. Basically, he is a god inside of that small sphere of control. But what you may have forgotten about is that the ultimate ability of Law's devil fruit is an ability called the Eternal Youth Surgery, or also called the Immortality Surgery. Now, this very mysterious and special power was first introduced during Dressrosa by the big bad guy 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, who really wanted Law to use the surgery on him in order to make 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 eternally young. We should point out though that this special ability comes with a very lethal downside though, because performing the surgery will kill the devil fruit user in the process. Now, we still don't know exactly how this ability works. For example, does it just literally make you immortal forever and you can just never ever die? Or does it mean that you just can never die of old age? Or on the other hand, could it just be that you transfer the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 user's remaining lifespan to the intended recipient and add your own years to theirs? You see, clearly we aren't quite sure yet how this actually works, but the theory in all of this comes from the idea that Law would one day have to use the surgery in order to save Luffy. Because as you might have picked up upon throughout the story, Luffy puts a lot of wear and tear on his body. In fact, many of his early gear powers make him significantly weaker after he's using them. In fact, people have told him multiple times throughout the story that he is harshly using up his own lifespan, and then Gear 5th has taken this to a whole new level by literally showing him as an old shrimpled man when he runs out of energy. And so for a long time, the common theory was that one day Luffy would finally use up all of his own lifespan and then Law would sacrifice himself in order to save him. Which is a pretty pretty traumatic, but also very credible theory if you ask me. However, we also can't forget that many people in the One Piece world really wanted that fruit as well, like the world government, who desperately wanted the 𝗗𝗡𝗩𝗡 no Mi and were even willing to pay 5 billion berries for it. In case you don't know, that is a truly crazy amount of money, roughly equal to $31 million and close to the highest bounties in the entire story. Now, some people think that they were willing to pay that much money for it so that the 𝗏𝗏 and the secret ruler of the world, Imu, could actually use the immortality surgery over and over again on themselves to keep themselves alive and young. In fact, even one of the Revolutionary Army's top commanders has speculated this exact same thing in a recent manga chapter, so it does seem like this very legendary surgery has likely been used in the past before. Honestly though, most of the community thought that Law would sacrifice himself for Luffy during the Wano arc, since Law played such a major role here, but obviously that didn't happen yet, so we'll have to see if the surgery will still play a real role in the story at some point. But now it's time for everyone's favorite segment already, the Devil Fruit Origin Theory Tier 2 edition. And this is where we're gonna get into some more serious theory mode, because we'll be discussing two things that most fans have very likely forgotten already. The first of these is the so-called National Treasure of 𝗵𝗏𝗏, which was first mentioned by Doflamingo back in chapter 761. Now, in case you don't remember or don't know, 𝗵𝗏𝗏 is the city on top of the Red Line where all the celestial dragons, the world nobles, live and rule the world from. And Doflamingo, who was a celestial dragon at one point, said that with Law's ability, he would be able to fully utilize the national treasure to seize true world power. And so for a long time, the community has speculated that this national treasure was none other than the Devil Fruit tree, which in a weird way sounds both really wild and really straightforward at the same time. I mean, they are called devil fruit, so it would kind of make a lot of sense that they would grow on a plant or tree, right? But we've never actually seen anything relating to this in the story, and we do know that they reincarnate into regular fruits that then transform, so is that actually the case? However, the second part of this that you've probably also forgotten is that there is a legendary tree growing probably inside of the Red Line, right where 𝗵𝗏𝗏 is located as well. That's because down on Fishman Island, which is located directly under the Red Line, we do learn that the Sunlight Tree Eve's roots grow all the way down to the bottom of the sea and thus provide light for the fishmen. And again, since Fishman Island is directly below the Red Line and 𝗵𝗏𝗏, then it would make a lot of sense for the Sunlight Tree Eve to also somehow be captured inside of the Red Line itself. So, do you see how these things connect? We have a mysterious national treasure of 𝗵𝗏𝗏 that has immense power to even take over the world. We also have a legendary tree essentially confirmed to grow in or under 𝗵𝗏𝗏 as well. So I think it would make a lot of sense that these two ideas are directly connected in some way. And I, for one, would absolutely love to see that the true origin of devil fruits is a giant tree that literally grows new devil fruits from within the world government's base of operation. Though I do kind of wonder how it would create powers like this one. But don't worry, we will hit our next origin theory, which I think is even better, down here in tier number 3. But first we have to discuss the next major weakness of devil fruit users, because yes, there is even more. Now, we already discussed their weakness to being in water, but you may have forgotten that there's also an incredibly rare material called sea stone that has the very same effect as the sea on devil fruit users as well. And first of all, this stuff is literally unbreakable. How they even managed to craft things out of this material is beyond me, but more importantly, when a devil fruit user touches this stuff, they instantly become weak, similar to how they are in water. Now, most of the time we do see these with handcuffs that the Marines use to capture devil fruit users, but it can also be added and used as weapons, made into cages, or even be crafted into little darts. Though it should be pointed out that with enough raw physical strength, devil fruit users can still somehow walk around like normal, like we see with the Emperor Big Mom here. They just won't be able to use their own devil fruit powers. And while that is a major weakness, devil fruit users also also have some incredible advantages when it comes to the second major power system in One Piece as well, that of course being Haki. To start with, some Devil Fruit users can combine their Devil Fruit and their Haki in very unique and creative ways. Just take Luffy's Gear 4th for example, where he coats his entire body in powerful Haki and then makes his body into unique shapes to gain even more powers from his Devil Fruit. But that's not the only way to boost Devil Fruit powers, and this next method is even more scientific, because when we first met the Straw Hat's Dr. Chopper, we were introduced to the Rumble Ball drug that can give special abilities to any Zoan Fruit user. And kind of suspicious that we haven't talked about them much recently. For example, when Chopper eats a Rumble Ball himself, he can transform into many more different forms beyond the regular Zoan transformations you usually get. It also gives a natural boost to his strength and endurance, but it does also have some serious drawbacks, because even in the current story, Chopper becomes weakened after consuming Rumble Balls. And there's actually one other even more interesting theory regarding the Rumble Balls, because fans have long wondered what would happen if another Zoan Fruit user would eat a Rumble Ball. Like, we do know that the polar bear mink Bippo took some of Chopper's drugs and was actually able to achieve his ultimate Sulong form, which is kind of fascinating in itself that the minks seem to be connected to Zoans. But what's even more interesting to ask is what would happen if Luffy ate one? Would he gain additional forms to his Nika form that we have just never seen before? Like, it's really fun to think about. However, one of the craziest things that we have never actually seen happen in the story is gonna kick off our dive into this next level as we move on to facts that even serious fans of the series probably don't remember. And I do know that this goes against the basic rule that we talked about earlier in the previous tier, but did you know that some Devil Fruits can actually work underwater? Yeah, that's right, and you may have forgotten two very important examples of Luffy being just fine underwater. The first one I'm just gonna say you definitely forgot about, which was right before the Jaya arc when the Straw Hats were almost crushed by this mysterious falling ship. And of course the first thing that Luffy wanted to do was just dive straight down and check out the sunken wreck. And he did just that by using this weird barrel diving suit, and surprisingly enough he was just fine underwater. Now this seems like it doesn't really matter that much, but you have to realize that this was the first time we ever learned that Devil Fruit users have to actually be touching the water in order to be weakened. And funnily enough, we saw the same principle again during the Fishman Island arc, where Luffy was thousands of meters underwater, but because he was coated with a bubble, he could function well enough to deliver this flaming punch to this evil fishman right here. Seriously though, major props to Luffy here, because if I was a Devil Fruit user in the real world, I'd probably never go underwater. Like, just one slip up with no one around to help and you're just a 100% goner. Now, despite that really harsh reality though, you may be surprised to learn that we've never actually once seen a Devil Fruit user actually drown in the story. Sure, we've seen Luffy fall in and need to be saved, and we even saw one of Kaido's top officers sink to the bottom of the sea. Luckily for him though, he was a fisherman who conveniently can breathe underwater. So yeah, not a single confirmed Devil Fruit user has drowned in One Piece, which is just mind-blowing when you think about it, since it's literally the #1 weakness of Devil Fruit users in a world filled with water. So I like to imagine that Oda is saving that very particular cruel fate for someone really special later on in the story. Looking at you, Blackbeard. Now, as we're diving into the deeper facts and theories about Devil Fruits, one thing you really need to understand is that some Devil Fruits simply have an unfair advantage over some others. And I'm not talking about the classic Devil Fruit weaknesses here, like Luffy being immune to electricity, but rather that some Devil Fruits are very similar to each other, except that one is clearly the better version of the other. Here's a great example. We all know that Fire Fist Ace was a really powerful Fire Logia Fruit user who rose to be the 2nd Division commander of a literal Yonko crew. However, while his Fire Logia Fruit is absurdly strong and really capable of creating giant walls of fire and even something that resembles a sun, it simply can't compare to the Magma Devil Fruit eaten by the current Fleet Admiral 𝗙𝗨𝗓𝗏. This guy's volcanic magma is an even higher order of fire than Ace's regular fire fruit, and this is really not the only example in the story. We also have the former admiral's Aokiji's ice devil fruit, which is naturally superior to the snow devil fruit that this girl has right here. And then we also have one of the most creative devil fruits, the arms fruit, which allows the user to turn any part of their body into literally any type of weapon, including blades, guns, and explosives, which just instantly makes it way better than the dice fruit, which only allows its user to turn body parts into blades. And turns out this isn't just a fan-made speculation. No, this was actually confirmed by Oda himself, again in one of the question corners, that some devil fruits are just naturally superior versions of their counterparts. But what's somehow even crazier though is that you may never have realized that there are actually ways of gaining a devil fruit ability without ever having to eat an actual devil fruit. And we've actually seen this a couple of times throughout the story, though it usually is not explicitly stated. The first real example was back during Big Mom's flashback, where she gained the powers of her soul devil fruit by literally eating the previous devil fruit user. Yikes. Still gives me the creeps every time I need to talk about this, and this next example is a brief manga spoiler for you anime onlys, but we also recently learned that a certain character gained their devil fruit abilities by receiving an infusion during a science experiment. As a result, they regularly gained the fruit powers like normal, even without ever touching or eating the fruit, and the fruit was just useless like normal afterwards as well. And then of course, coming up soon, we will discuss the mystery of how in the world Blackbeard gained his second devil fruit power as well. Stay tuned for those crazy ideas, because now it's time to finally discuss the most powerful subtype of devil fruits in the entire story. And so far we've covered the 3 basic types and a bunch of subcategories of zones and paramecias. But now let's finally break down the single rarest and most powerful devil fruit type in existence, the mythical zone category. Now, these devil fruits have all the same abilities as regular zones, except that they transform their user into mythological creatures of legend. For example, the Emperor Kaido's dragon abilities, or the nine-tailed fox fruit, which allows the user to literally shapeshift. And being able to transform into a legendary creature is awesome by itself, but the thing about these fruits that really sets them apart is the fact that each one grants its user a special magical ability on top of the regular zone stuff. It's kind of like eating 2 devil fruits. For example, Marco the Phoenix has the ability to heal himself with his magical flames, and the Shogun of Wano, Orochi, he ate the Yamato no Orochi devil fruit, and he basically has to be killed 8 times before he will actually die. So honestly, he did deserve a few more deaths if you ask me. So yeah, these fruits are absolutely broken ability-wise, but these abilities get taken to even higher levels when a devil fruit user achieves awakening. Now, if you spent any time with One Piece at all, I'm pretty sure you've heard this term before because it has been brought up many times by many characters, but let's break down everything we currently know about devil fruit awakenings to begin with. First, a devil fruit awakening is basically the ultimate peak of a devil fruit user's abilities, and according to the Emperor Kaido, it only occurs when a person's mind and body are finally able to harness the full potential of the devil fruit. Now, for most of the awakened users that we've actually seen in the story, it takes years and years of practice to achieve this. Most never do, but those that do actually unlock this final power-up, it grants them powers unique to their category of devil fruit. For example, let's start with zone devil fruits, where awakening their fruit simply gives them even more boosts in speed, strength, endurance, and recovery. For example, the leopard man Lucci awakened his devil fruit by the time that he reached Egghead Island, and his powers had grown to truly incredible levels. Now, as you can see here, devil fruit awakenings are often accompanied by this kind of smoke-like scarf, which is based on Buddhism, though this is not always the case, because way back during the Impel Down arc, we met the jailer beasts, who we were told were actually awakened zone users. However, they clearly didn't have any of these smoke scarves, and they have these pretty goofy appearances, so many fans have speculated that these are not actually fully awakened, or that the users could not truly control the awakened form of their devil fruit and the animal inside the fruit just fully took over the person. In that case, the smoke scarf would kind of signify that someone has truly mastered their fruit. In some cases, awakened Zoan also gain additional special abilities such as Luffy's Gear 5th transformation, which basically allows him to use his Sun God Nika abilities. As far as we know, this was probably his devil fruit awakening, and it obviously gave him some truly crazy abilities, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. But that is just the case for Zoan types. Paramecia devil fruits also have their very own special awakening powers, which allows them to transfer their powers to the environment around them. Now, the first ever example we actually saw of this was the former warlord 𝗙𝗏𝗡𝗍𝗡, who used his awakened string devil fruit to turn his entire environment into string. A little bit later, similarly, the pirate captain Eustace Kidd awakened his magnetism devil fruit and was able to make other things and people magnetic as opposed to just himself or objects. And I do kind of wonder if Kidd's awakened powers could attract himself a girlfriend, but probably not. However, the most game-changing awakenings surely belong to the logia fruit category, because even though we've never actually had a confirmed awakened logia user so far, we can speculate quite a bit that the admirals Aokiji and Akainu used their awakened ice and magma devil fruits to permanently change the landscape on the island of Punk Hazard. This island was once a jungle, and one half was forever transformed into a frozen wasteland, while the other became a volcanic hellscape. Now, you may remember in tier level 2 that we discussed the horrific artificial smile devil fruits and their terrible consequences. However, devil fruits in science are not always a recipe for disaster. That is because the genius scientist Dr. Vega Punk has actually achieved some truly magnificent accomplishments in this area. For example, he figured out how to feed devil fruits to non-living objects. We've actually seen this in the story with this dog cannon, this elephant sword, and this teapot, which was turned into a tanuki. But what's even more incredible is that he also successfully copied a literal devil fruit. And not just any devil fruit at that, but one of the most powerful one, the Emperor Kaido's dragon fruit. Now, this copied fruit was then eaten by a young Momonosuke, and we finally saw just how incredibly perfect this creation was when he managed to transform into a full-fledged pink version of Kaido's dragon. However, this does seem to require DNA from the current devil fruit user, which we do know Vega Punk had obtained from when Kaido was captured by the government many years ago. Why is there a mosquito? I don't know. It's like summer in Japan right now, and I mean, I swear I try to keep the windows closed, but somehow they always get in. And I'm just okay, anyway, this is a whole different story, but I'm a magnet. I'm a real mosquito magnet. No. Okay, I think I'm safe. At this point, let's jump into some spicy tier 3 devil fruit theories, the first of which involves the most famous treasure of them all, the One Piece itself. And you might be surprised to hear that Luffy may never actually end up finding it. Crazy, right? Well, let me explain. Because throughout the story, there is some really strong evidence that you cannot have a devil fruit if you want to reach the final island Laugh Tale. Now, why is this theory even a thing? Well, so far, the only people we've seen reach Laugh Tale were the former Pirate King and his crew. And one weird thing about the former Pirate King's crew is you might have noticed that there was literally no one with a devil fruit there except for Buggy the Clown. However, when the crew was about to reach Laugh Tale, Buggy mysteriously fell ill, which meant that he and the future Emperor Shanks had to stay behind. So yeah, absolutely no devil fruit users as far as we know were involved. But what's maybe even crazier is that when we look at Shanks' crew today, he also has not a single devil fruit user on it. And let's be real, at that level, that just can't be a coincidence. And the reason that makes the most sense to explain all of this is that Shanks knows that you can't have a devil fruit if you want to reach the final island. He basically also foreshadows this in chapter 19 when he tells Buggy there's a lot of treasure at the bottom of the ocean that you can't reach if you have a fruit. fruit. Now, obviously, this is still a theory, and somehow we know that Luffy will have to be able to find the One Piece, but how exactly that's gonna happen might not be as straightforward and simple as we all think. And speaking of Luffy here, his Gear 5th transformation actually gave us strong evidence to support yet another devil fruit theory that has been roaming around the One Piece community for many years. Now, this theory that I have worked with quite a lot back in the day states that devil fruits have a will of their own, and this will actually influences the people who eat the fruit. As a great example, as soon as Luffy enters Gear 5th, his Nika form, he shows off this over-the-top, super wacky, goofy personality, and the first time he did this, he was laughing so uncontrollably that I was legitimately concerned for his mental health. But as it turns out, that is way from the only example, as it seems that many devil fruit users' personalities usually seem to perfectly match their devil fruit powers as well. For example, Doflamingo is a master manipulator who can literally control people with his strings. Another example is Ace, whose fiery powers really well match his red-hot temper and personality. Plus, when Luffy finally awakened his devil fruit, we got this super interesting discussion from the 5 elders that Luffy's devil fruit seems to have been evading them on purpose for over 800 years. There's also the fact that Big Mom got a lot like Mother Caramel after consuming her fruit. So yeah, I definitely personally subscribe to this theory that devil fruits have a will of their own, or kind of remember the will of previous users, and that they do affect the person who eats them. But next up, I have a very special devil fruit theory for Nami fans. This theory comes from the end of the Punk Hazard arc, where fans have been speculating that the Straw Hat's navigator will one day eat a very specific devil fruit. And that's because we do know that the previous Snow Devil Fruit user has died, and there just so happens to be a grove of tangerine trees on the Thousand Sunny. And so fans have long speculated that the Snow Devil Fruit might have actually transferred and reincarnated over to the Thousand Sunny, and it will later be eaten by Nami. Now, you might ask, why Nami? Well, there's basically no better devil fruit match for Nami's weather-based fighting style than a power that would give her literal control over parts of the weather. Plus, of course, it is her tangerine tree, so I feel like there would be a clear connection right there. So please, Oda, give us Snow Angel Nami that we all definitely want. However, there's actually one other weather-connected power that fans have been dying to learn about for probably like 2 decades now, and those powers belong to none other than Luffy's father, Monkey D. Dragon, whose powers have to this day still not been revealed in the story. However, we do have some really strong evidence for what they might actually be, because almost every single time he has shown up in the story, there are some sort of strong winds or storms in the surrounding area. For example, the earliest instance of this was during Dragon's introduction, where there was a freak storm that actually saved the Straw Hats and Luffy specifically back during Loketown. Then there was the time that Dragon showed up and saved the people of Luffy's home island from a rampaging fire, and somehow there was this massive gust of wind that made a safe passage through the Inferno. And so ever since these 2 occurrences, there has been a really strong and persistent theory that Monkey D. Dragon ate a wind logia devil fruit, or at least some other type of weather-connected power that lets him control the winds or storms. But now, at this point in tier level 3, it's finally time to discuss one of the biggest devil fruit mysteries in the entire story, and that is, how did Blackbeard eat a second devil fruit? Because so far in the story, the evil Commodore is actually the only person to ever eat 2 fruits, and probably the only person in known history to actually pull this off so far. And so the obvious question is, how in the world was he able to do this without dying? And well, as you can imagine, there have been tons and tons of insane and even insaner theories about this over the years, which we'll cover in later tiers, getting more crazy with the tier, but the simplest one is that it has something to do with Blackbeard's Darkness Devil Fruit. Just to quickly remind you, the Darkness Devil Fruit that Blackbeard consumed and was hunting for years is kind of a very unique logia power. First, it doesn't make Blackbeard intangible like basically any other elemental logia, but instead it makes him take more damage than usual. However, in exchange for that, he gains some of the most insane powers in the story. First, he can create and manipulate this smoky darkness that allows him to suck anything into a black hole, which he can then shoot out in a giant explosion. But probably the most insane power of the Darkness Devil Fruit is that he can absorb devil fruit powers of other people. Basically, that means that any devil fruit user he touches can no longer use their ability while he is in contact with them. And now I say all of this to just really highlight how broken and mysterious and unique this power is compared to other fruits. And Blackbeard has waited 26 whole years searching the sea for this one particular power, so talk about a real long con here. But really, that just shows that he must have known how special this fruit was, but all this has led many people to speculate that the reason he can use multiple fruits to begin with is because it is a special ability granted by the special nature of the darkness devil fruit. And again, don't worry, we'll discuss some more even crazier Blackbeard devil fruit theories later on, but now it's once again time to look into the mysterious origins of devil fruits, because the next theory here is based on the fact that the One Piece world used to be much more technologically advanced than we all ever thought. Now, this truth was revealed during the Egghead Island arc by Vega Punk, so now we have the very real possibility that devil fruits were once created as scientific experiments long ago. Honestly, we aren't really sure how this would have worked or how the fruits continue to live on to this day, but science is basically a form of magic, even in One Piece, so nothing is really that unlikely or impossible with this statement. And just to show you how closely devil fruits and science are already connected, in chapter 698, Law talks about how bloodline elements, which in One Piece is basically the same thing as DNA, are really important to the creation of artificial devil fruits. And so it makes a lot of sense to me that a highly advanced, technologically super scientific kingdom could have easily learned how to make real devil fruits by modifying DNA in various ways. Basically making devil fruits biotechnology, but even if devil fruits were created with advanced science, they couldn't get rid of all the devil fruits' weaknesses. And I mean, we have already discussed the weaknesses to water and sea stone, but did you know that some devil fruits even have weaknesses to elements or other natural substances? The best example here is this, the classic Enel phase when he finds out that Luffy's rubber wasn't at all affected by his lightning abilities. And we also have the time in Alabasta when Luffy used water and blood to make the sand logia fruit user Crocodile a solid target that he could actually hit. And in fact, these two aren't even the only examples, because even Brook's soul devil fruit can interfere with Big Mom's control over her own soul army of underlings or animated objects. So yeah, devil fruits are insanely powerful, but many of them do have some very specific counter weaknesses that can be used against them. Which means that if you ever had to fight a devil fruit user, you'd really want to get your hands on this very first obscure item that we discuss as we dive straight down into the icy cold depths of the 4th tier. And that's because one of the most important and yet always forgotten about objects in the entire One Piece world is actually something that barely ever gets discussed. And that is this massive book right here. This is the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, which is said to contain tons and tons of useful information about all types of devil fruits all over the world. This includes the names of the fruits, lists of its abilities, and in most cases even a description of what the fruit itself looks like. Some of them even have illustrations to go with that description, so for some devil fruits you can know exactly what they look like before they get eaten. And in fact, it was this very book which played a key role in one of the most shocking events in the story, because it is exactly how Blackbeard knew how to look for the darkness logia fruit. However, this book also isn't perfect, as there are some fruits that either aren't listed at all or don't have descriptions or are listed under the wrong name. For example, these two fruits that the government's secret agents ate are missing from the book entirely. Plus, it seems like there are multiple versions, because Dr. Vega Punk mentioned that the version that he read had no mention of Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Mi whatsoever. Now, that could just be, of course, because Luffy's fruit was not the Gomu Gomu no Mi, or maybe no one had eaten the fruit in many centuries, but I'm over here just wanting to know who actually wrote this very mysterious book, because whoever it is seems like they must have a lot of really useful information. Plus, can we please get a copy of this book in real life? Like, that is something I would definitely love to have. Like, seriously, Oda, I would buy this thing in a heartbeat. Just take my money, please. But there's one person in the story who probably still knows more about devil fruits and the Void Century than anyone else, and I bet it's not who you're thinking of, because this person holds the record for owning the oldest official devil fruit and was literally born during the Void Century over 800 years ago. So no, we're not talking about Vega Punk, we're talking about none other than the time-traveling devil fruit user 𝗏𝗘𝗩𝗜, because this lady right here came from 830 years in the past, which would have been right around the ending of the Void Century. And now, while we don't know when or how devil fruits were actually created, this one is currently the oldest confirmed fruit in the story, and I'd certainly love to see more of her in the story as well. Yes, I know she is technically supposed to be dead, but you never really know with One Piece characters, and if there's one person who could definitely escape death easily, it would be 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 by just jumping into the future. Now, on top of her broken time leaping powers though, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is one of the few characters in the story who brings up a super interesting question regarding devil fruits, parenting, and DNA in general. Because along with Big Mom, we also know that 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is someone who gave birth to children after eating their devil fruits, and since we do know that devil fruits change your DNA, wouldn't it make sense that a parent's altered DNA would pass on to the children as well? Well, apparently not, because 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's children Momonosuke and Hiyori were born perfectly normal with no effects from the devil fruit whatsoever. And same could be said for Big Mom's numerous, and I mean numerous kids, and although some of her children are quite strange, to say the least, I'd say that probably comes from Big Mom's strange body and her questionable choice and selecting process for husbands. But now, did you know that there have been 2 other examples of characters using multiple devil fruits at the same time except Blackbeard? Can you think of who I'm talking about? No. Well, first we have Big Mom's daughter, Charlotte Brûlé, who was able to use her mirror powers to copy Luffy's powers completely. And yes, this includes his stretchy body, as we saw when she fought toe-to-toe against the Straw Hat Captain. That's just the first example though. The second one comes from the One Piece movie 9, where we get the return of one of the most hated characters in the story, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And this former ruler of Drum Island is so messed up that he went and literally ate his brother. Now, this isn't as gruesome as it sounds, because 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's munch devil fruit powers allow him to consume and then combine things, so he and his brother basically fused together. This actually let 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 use his brother's devil fruit powers, so even though it is not technically a part of the canon story, it's still a really interesting example of 2 devil fruit powers in the same body. And then there's also Bonnie, but we will get to that later. At this point though, it's now time to talk about one of my all-time favorite personal theories that has been around for a really long time as well, because if you've been around One Piece long enough, you probably know that Oda will often play a lot of number games with the chapter numbers and within the story itself that can have a lot of hidden meanings. And it turns out this is also applied to devil fruits and the Straw Hat crew as well, because did you know that the 4 confirmed devil fruit users on the crew, Luffy, Chopper, Robin, and Brook, all have devil fruit names that can be broken down into basic Japanese numbers? For examples, Chopper's Hito Hito no Mi, or the human fruit, goes like this. Hi in Japanese can represent the number 1, hitotsu, while to is usually the number 10. So we have 1 and 10 for Chopper. Now for Luffy's fruit, we have go and mu representing 5 and 6, go and mutsu. Robin's Hana Hana no Mi gives us 7 and 8, while Brook's Yomi Yomi no Mi can be separated into 4 and 3, yon and mitsu. So that gives us numbers 1 through 10, except for the numbers 2 and 9. And many years ago, some clever fans put together that the number 2 and 9 could make the word Nikyu, and it just happens that we have a Nikyu no Mi devil fruit. And this is none other than the pawpaw fruit eaten by the former warlord Bartholomew Kuma. And so the theory goes that one day Kuma will die and someone else in the Straw Hat crew will eat the pawpaw fruit, because this would give the Straw Hats the complete set of the numbers 1 through 10, and this is still a very possible theory given the events in the recent arcs, or it could be that Oda will invent another devil fruit in the future that also matches this number pattern as well. However, we do also have to consider that Luffy's fruit is no longer called the Gomu Gomu no Mi, so maybe the whole theory is just dead in the water at this point anyway, but it does kind of make a lot of sense, so I would like to think that this one might still come true in the future. But if that theory somehow wasn't enough for you, then let's get back to our next spicy Blackbeard one to explain how in the world he has so many devil fruits. And now this theory comes all the way back from when we actually first met Blackbeard during the Jaya arc, because throughout the space of a few chapters we saw many different sides of Blackbeard. First, he was a food-loving, sort of kind goofball, kind of like Luffy. Then of course we had Blackbeard the Dreamer when he gave one of his most famous lines. And then of course we also know Blackbeard as a devious planner and schemer who frequently makes really complicated and intricate plans to gain power. In other words, three really different and seemingly paradoxical sides in the same person. And to top it all off, Luffy and Zoro dropped one of the most mysterious line in the story when they refer to Blackbeard as them, in plural, as in more than one person, which actually has led many people to believe that Blackbeard is somehow more than one person, or actually has three completely different personalities in one body. Now, to add even more fuel to this theory, Blackbeard has a really strong association with the number 3, as he has 3 pistols, 3 skulls on his Jolly Roger, and he used to wield a claw weapon with 3 blades, which, by the way, is where Shanks got his scar from. Plus, we learned during Odin's flashback that Blackbeard is rumored to never sleep. And so the idea is that if Blackbeard is really 3 people or 3 separate personalities in one body, then each version of Blackbeard might have its own separate devil fruit, which might kind of rotate throughout the body, which is exactly why many people believe that Blackbeard will eat or has already eaten a 3rd devil fruit to match that same numbering theme as well. However, there is actually one possibility to explain Blackbeard's mysterious ability that I would honestly think would be super hilarious if true, because we have been told all throughout the story that you can only eat 1 devil fruit, but what if the myth that you can only eat 1 devil fruit is just completely wrong and anyone strong enough can actually eat more than 1, but everyone's just too scared to try it? It would explain a lot about Blackbeard, honestly, plus it makes sense why the world government would spread a rumor like that if they don't want strong people gaining more power. So count me in on debunking lies and propaganda for this theory, and in fact I'm working on a full-length, extended, full-time video just on that theory right now, so keep your eyes out for that. Subscribe if you aren't already to and not miss that one. But now let's jump back into the devil fruit origins theories with Vega Punk's theory of where devil fruit come from. And this is actually the most recent theory to explain the actual origin of devil fruits, and it goes something like this. In chapter 1069, Vega Punk explained that he believes devil fruits are a manifestation of human evolution and were brought into existence by human hopes and desires and dreams. So basically, someone believed in or wished for powers so much so that they somehow appeared kind of existing in a different dimension. Now, the actual method for actually fulfilling these wishes and bringing them into reality is something that not even Vega Punk knows. It could be that they were scientifically created based on the desires of people, or perhaps the wishes were answered by some sort of devil fruit god or other entity. You know, something like the devil himself, but Vega Punk himself states that it's only a theory, so there are many more origin theories to come deeper down the iceberg, and trust me, they get even more mind-blowing and wild than this one. Sticking a little bit to science though, we simply must talk about Vega Punk's craziest invention so far when it comes to devil fruit, because during the Egghead Island arc, we were introduced to these insanely powerful clones called the Seraphim. And let me tell you, these things are incredible in more ways than just one. Not only are they clones of some of the strongest characters in the story, the warlords, and can shoot out lasers, but they also have special Lunarian DNA, which makes them nearly unkillable. But the craziest part is that Vega Punk created a special substance called green blood, which gives them all access to artificial devil fruit powers as well. And this is just such a much bigger deal than people realize, because it is unlimited access to devil fruit powers, or at least the ones that Vega Punk had the DNA available for. For example, we've seen a copy of Kuma's paw powers and even the dice fruit, which in the hands of these overpowerful monstrous clones are deadly enough to even challenge the top tier fighters of the Straw Hat crew and even emperors like Luffy or Blackbeard. Like seriously, Vega Punk's technology is absolutely changing the world right now, and not really in a good way if you ask me. However, he's not the only scientist cracking the secrets of devil fruits, because the Straw Hat's Dr. Chopper might have broken the code of awakening his devil fruit super early in the actual story. Now, if you haven't fallen asleep yet, which if you have, wake up, we're not done yet, but we already talked about the Rumble Balls and how they enhance his Zoan devil fruit powers, but what we didn't talk about yet is this. This is Monster Point, which is Chopper's strongest transformation, as you probably know. Now, during the pre-time skip part of the story, he used to only be able to achieve this by eating 3 Rumble Balls in a really short period of time. And by now, many people actually think that this might actually be Chopper's full devil fruit awakening, since it gives him such a tremendous boost in all of his physical attributes. Which honestly is pretty incredible if he actually achieved his own awakening through just science and not training with his fruit. However, this didn't come without consequences, because during the pre-time skip part, he could not control these powers at all and would go on a mindless rampage. Now, it turns out that this is somewhat similar to the jailer beasts in Impel Down, who also seem to be these mindless beasts who were controlled by their animal urges, basically being failed awakenings. Or I mean, maybe they're just really that dumb. I mean, there's certainly enough characters with negative IQ points in One Piece for this to be an actual possibility as well. Going back to Devil Fruit's weaknesses though, this next weakness is one that affects even the strongest fighters in the story, because before the time skip, Luffy and the crew were basically helpless against Logia fruit users completely. I mean, Luffy was nearly killed even before ever reaching the Grand Line by this smoke fruit user, and the whole crew was almost wiped out by the light fruit user in Sabaody as well. However, during the time skip, they actually learned the secret to finally beating Logias, which is armament Haki. Now, this power can actually allow someone to easily bypass a Logia's intangibility, meaning that they can actually be physically hit. Which obviously is a huge nerf to Logia users, since basically every strong fighter at this point has armament Haki in the story, and yet that's not the only weakness that devil fruit users have to Haki as well, because as we learned in Wano, some devil fruit abilities cannot affect strong Haki users at all. For example, during the rooftop battle against Kaido and Big Mom, many fans wondered why Law couldn't just use his Shambles ability to simply drop Big Mom and Kaido into the sea. Well, turns out Oda thought about this as well, and to answer this, Law explains to us that some abilities are actually useless against someone with overwhelmingly strong Haki. In fact, a little later, Law showed himself off the benefits of strong Haki during his crew's fight against the Blackbeard pirates, when he was able to resist the gender swapping powers of Blackbeard's Twisted Doctor. Which is just a wild and fun sentence to say. Gotta really love One Piece. Which now brings us to the unthinkable depths of the tier 5. And let me tell you, this tier is full of straight up strange devil fruit theories and facts, just like creepy unseen creatures that swim in the murky depths of the ocean. Which we'll start with by explaining how water doesn't completely remove some devil fruit abilities, at least for some select characters. Because back during the Arlong Park arc, Luffy was sunk into the sea with his feet stuck in a block of stone. And while he couldn't move or do anything himself underwater, his body was still rubber. In other words, the devil fruit effects were not completely removed 100%. We do know this because his friends were able to stretch his entire neck all the way up to the surface, like we see in this panel right here. And so it seems like if a person's body is transformed by the devil fruit, then they don't go back to a regular human flesh and bones body, even when submerged underwater. Now, this basically means that someone like 𝗗𝗏𝗏𝗜𝗟 would still have a mochi body underwater, and that the pirate clown Buggy should still be able to separate his body parts if someone pulls him apart, even while underwater. But these might not even be the most interesting examples though, because what's even more fascinating is that some devil fruit users can actually interact with the ocean in some truly odd ways. For example, Big Mom's son Oven can stick his hands into the ocean and still use his heat-based powers to boil it, as we see right here when he's heating up the oceans to boiling temperatures to cook the fisherman pirates. Which in a way is really strange, honestly, because the sea is supposed to completely negate devil fruit powers like this. However, it is far from the only example we've seen of devil fruit powers working on the ocean itself. And the best example is the former Admiral Aokiji, who can freeze the entire ocean to ride his own bike. Or Big Mom's eldest son 𝗙𝗏𝗡𝗏, who can make this giant candy creature that rides on top of the waves. So clearly it seems that the ocean doesn't completely just neutralize all devil fruit abilities by contact, it just takes away the user's free will to like enact his powers if he's submerged enough. But now this next devil fruit connection is gonna really blow your mind, I think, because you see, during the Whole Cake Island arc we learned about the Mink's secret power form, the 𝗏𝗏 form. And in this state they undergo an incredible transformation where their fur turns pure white and they become exceptionally powerful. Now, how this relates to devil fruits though is that this transformation looks shockingly similar to Luffy's Gear 5th transformation, where Luffy turns to that same pure white color as well. And the connections don't just end there though, because just like Gear 5th, 𝗏𝗏 form leaves the Minks exhausted and it takes a ton of practice to actually pull off. In fact, we've been told that a Mink can lose their minds and personalities completely if they can't control their 𝗏𝗏 transformation, which is kind of similar to how Luffy seemed to lose parts of himself when he first transformed into Gear 5th. Now on top of all of that, Minks typically can only use 𝗏𝗏 when they look up at the full moon, as we know Luffy is the sun god, so there is some sun and moon parallels and shenanigans going on here as well. But now you could ask, what does this actually have to do with devil fruits? Well, as we've already discussed, it's very likely that devil fruits were created sometimes in the very distant past, even before the Void Century. So I do wonder if some of the same power that was passed on in the Nika devil fruit was also somehow passed on to the Mink tribe as well. Which, to be fair, we have basically no evidence for at this point, but it's definitely something that I could see coming true further on in the story. And yet all of this brings us back again to Luffy's devil fruit and one of the most shocking, mind-blowing reveals in all of One Piece, which is that Luffy's devil fruit was not the Gomu Gomu no Mi, the rubber fruit, but instead a mythical zone fruit called the human model sun god Nika fruit. And man, let me tell you, there was never a time when the One Piece community was more like a blazing dumpster fire than with this reveal, but we still have a ton of questions regarding the true nature of this fruit. For example, we do know that the Gorosei were searching for it for hundreds of years, but that it somehow managed to evade them. And even when they had finally captured it and it was safely aboard a ship of the government, Shanks and his crew swooped in and stole it from under their noses. So it does sure seem like this fruit does have some special influence that keeps it from falling into the wrong hands. Or you could even say that it falls into the perfect hands, or mouth should I say, of a young Monkey D. Luffy. And I mean, if we're really saying that this devil fruit has a real will of its own, then that has huge implications for the entire story, because it would hint at the fact that the true nature of devil fruits is not as simple as it has always seemed, and that maybe devil fruits really do hold the soul of an ancient person, and maybe devil fruits are even able to somewhat pick their user as well. Plus, if Luffy's fruit was actually something different from what we originally thought, then what other fruits in the story might have been misnamed as well? Like, could Blackbeard's fruit be something other than the darkness logia? Could that explain his strange, unique abilities? Like, I personally would not doubt that. So sign me up for the dark moon god devil fruit instead of the darkness fruit. And actually, this kind of brings us back to the question from earlier of, do devil fruits alter or enhance the personality of the person who ate the fruit? Because again, we've already mentioned that Luffy was laughing uncontrollably once he awakened the fruit, kind of not seeming himself really, but who is to say that eating the fruit as a kid didn't change his whole destiny and personality back then? I mean, sure, Luffy was always a fun, kind-loving kid, but I can imagine a fruit like the Nika fruit would absolutely take his sense of freedom and adventure to a whole different level. After all, Luffy was kind of grumpy and a bit of a crybaby when we first meet him before eating the fruit. And the same could be said for other devil fruit users like Akainu and his really over-the-top fiery temper being a perfect match for his blazing magma fruit as well. And then of course, one of the biggest questions in all of this is if Shanks actually knows the truth about the fruit that he stole from the world government agents. As in, was it his his plan all along to feed it to someone who could unlock its true potential? Like, was that the plan that Roger had described to him before they separated for the last time, making sure that Shanks gets the fruit and awakens the next Joy Boy? I think we're about to find out very soon, but we're just getting started with the wildest devil fruit theories in One Piece, because these next two theories are gonna really take us all the way back to Noland and 𝗙𝗪𝗓 from the Skypiea arc when we had their flashback. And the first theory is that devil fruits might have grown from the sacred trees and dead souls on Jaya. Don't believe me or don't know what I'm talking about? Well, here's a few key mind-blowing details about that. First, we have the absolute sense of betrayal that the Shandian chief 𝗙𝗪𝗓 felt when Nolan and his crew chopped down a grove of trees that were considered sacred to the Shandian people. Now, you might remember that Nolan only did this to actually stop the spread of a deadly disease, but as we learned from 𝗙𝗪𝗓's daughter, these trees were considered to house the souls of the Shandian ancestors. Now, you may be asking how all of this relates to devil fruits, but the important thing to note here is that the Shandian people believe that the trees literally contained the souls of their ancestors. And if you remember how we discussed earlier about how artificial smile devil fruits were created, then you should be thinking that maybe trees that contain souls might be a great way to grow actual devil fruits as well. Because again, as we've discussed, devil fruits do seem to have a soul or will of their own, so wouldn't it make sense if they came from sacred trees that contained the souls of the dead? And by the way, there were also these sacred trees in Wano as well that were also said to hold souls, which is again Wano, Shandora, going back to the Void Century, to ancient countries. But to add yet another layer to this, it was actually said during the Jaya arc that the Shandian people ring their giant golden bell in order to help the souls of the dead find their way back to these trees. And if that sounds crazy to you, well, just remember that we've seen Brook's music affect the soul many times in the story, so it isn't quite as crazy as it might sound initially. What is kind of creepy though is that it requires the soul of the dead to grow these devil fruits, which is just kind of weird and really dark if you really think about it. And we're actually not done yet with really wild devil fruit theories from the Shandians, because when Nolan first arrived on Jaya, he was about to witness a really brutal and gruesome sacrifice. That's right, the Shandian people were gonna sacrifice 𝗙𝗪𝗓's daughter in a desperate offer for the gods to save them from their disease. But what's actually most interesting in all of this is this panel right here. And that's because here they mention 4 gods: the sun, rain, forest, and earth gods. And we didn't know it at that time, but now that we know that Luffy actually ate the sun god Nika fruit, it kind of brought up the question of if there are other god type devil fruits out there in the world as well. And in fact, we actually already have some devil fruits that could perfectly fit into this framework already. For example, the Marine Admiral Green Bull has the forest logia fruit, and while he doesn't seem to have a godlike ability like Luffy, his powers to regrow plant life from the wastelands of Wano in an instant seems like a really important and really broken power to me as well. And that would basically just leave the rain and the earth fruit. Now, for the rain god fruit, there's nothing super obvious from devil fruits we've already known about, but we do know that Monkey D. Dragon has some sort of really powerful weather-related ability, so I could see him having a god-like rain or storm ability, and I mean like father like son, am I right? Now, for the earth fruit, there are no obvious candidates, but I wouldn't be surprised if we someday learn about a fruit capable of creating a massive stretch of land, like let's say the red line. And honestly, to me, that just sounds like a perfect ability for a god-like earth devil fruit to have. And of course, we can't move off of this same topic without wondering if maybe there were 4 original gods that lived in the One Piece world. I mean, we already know that Nika seems to be a real figure that did live at some point from the Giants mythology, so it wouldn't surprise me if the other 3 gods turned out to be real in some way or form as well. And honestly, now that we know a lot more about the Void Century, like the lore before the Void Century, that is something I am really dying to see, because it seems like Luffy, Joy Boy, and Nika were just 3 complete different generations. But next, let's shift our focus to some other wildly speculated devil fruits, because One Piece fans have always wanted to see these devil fruits exist in the story. And first off, we have the water devil fruit, which just like it sounds would be an ultimate ability to turn into and control water. And who knows if we'll ever see this power exist. It is directly related to the main devil fruit weakness, so it just might not really make sense, but it would certainly feel overpowered if it ever existed. Now beyond that though, ever since we learned the true power of the secret ruler of the world, Emu, fans have also wondered if he somehow ate a literal devil fruit that gave him, well, devil powers, demonic powers as well. And actually, speaking of dark and demonic things in One Piece, it's also time now to discuss the most twisted example of devil fruits and scientific experimentation. And quick warning, this will be a little bit of a manga spoiler for anyone not caught up to the latest chapters, but in Egghead Island, we learned the truth of Jewelry Bonnie's devil fruit powers as well. And it does seem like she never even ate a devil fruit to begin with. Instead, what happened is that she was given an infusion of devil fruit extract, which is just kind of mind-boggling how that would even work, but it also gave her the actual devil fruit powers as if she had actually eaten the fruit herself. But what's even more interesting is that the actual devil fruit her infusion came from then lost all of its powers. And we're still in the process of learning all of the wild implications of this, but we could see a future in the story where people don't eat devil fruits at all, but instead just get their superpowers from a shot at a medical clinic. And while this may be the future of devil fruits, it's once again time now to talk about their past in our next devil fruit origin theory. And this one is gonna be really crazy based on recent events during the Egghead Island arc, because this theory revolves around the idea that there was one original devil fruit power, and that power allowed all the other devil fruits to be made. What was that original power? Well, around the time Vega Punk revealed his own devil fruit ideas, many people thought that the one original fruit might have been Kuma's pawpaw fruit. In fact, I speculated exactly that in one of my chapter reviews when we first learned about its true powers, which does sound weird at first, I know, but we are down here in tier level 5 of the Iceberg, where really weird devil fruit theories do live and thrive. So listen to this idea. During Vegapunk's experiments with Kuma, they did learn that Kuma could push out intangible things like his memories. You know, kind of how he did it with Pain with Zoro and Luffy. And so the idea was that if Kuma could push anything out of someone, maybe he could push out someone's dream or desires as well. And then this person's desire could then be transferred to a fruit, which could then be eaten. And honestly, even a couple of chapters later, I still really like this idea as much as any of the others that we've talked about so far, but it's not the only idea for what the original devil fruit could have been, because we of course have Luffy's seemingly limitless power of imagination, which might also be a power able to create something like devil fruits. And then on the other hand, there's also the true powers of Bonnie's crazy devil fruit, which allow her to create futures that she believes are possible. And so really, with either of these three fruits, a previous user or original user could have been so powerful that they fulfilled the dreams of others by creating all other devil fruits, kind of making that original devil fruit the one and only in existence at one point. Though then again, I'm always wondering who in the world would have wanted something like the jacket fruit is really beyond me, but I guess people are weird. And one power that I'm very sure someone could very well have wanted though is Blackbeard's darkness fruit, so let's jump back in and discuss our next theory for how he can eat so many devil fruits. And this goes back to the strangeness of Blackbeard's body, because we already mentioned that Luffy and Zoro refer to Blackbeard as them or being multiple people, but instead of having multiple personalities, this next theory speculates that Blackbeard actually was born as triplets and that somehow the other two are still living inside of him right now. Which sounds crazy, but others who have known Blackbeard for a long time, like his former crewmate Marco or 𝗙𝗏𝗏 Devon, have also mentioned how odd Blackbeard's body is and that it has a very unique body structure. So could Blackbeard just really have been conjured triplets or something like that? Or another bonus idea is that Blackbeard once ate another fruit that allows him to eat multiple devil fruits. Something like a mythical octopus fruit, because an octopus has 3 hearts, or the idea of a mythical Cerberus fruit has also been thrown out there many years ago, since the legendary dog has 3 heads. However, now we're finally moving into tier number 6 and the deepest, darkest depths of devil fruit lore and theories. And fair warning, there will be more manga spoilers here, but this next idea is that devil fruits actually come from the moon or outer space. That's right, I told you things were gonna get really weird down here because we already know that space pirates are a real canon thing in One Piece, and there are even colonies on the moon, so who's to say that devil fruits didn't originate in space anyways? That could explain why the sea hates them so much, since they aren't actually native to the One Piece blue planet. And alongside this idea is that devil fruits were created by the Lunarian race. Now, in case you forgot, the Lunarians are a super special race of angelic beings who used to live atop the Red Line. And there is still so much that we still don't know about them, but we do know that they were hunted down when the world government was formed and took over control over the world. So it is very possible that they were hunted because they did know the secrets of creating devil fruits to begin with. And this next theory though is gonna go completely change the One Piece world, because as we recently learned in the manga, and major spoilers again here, the One Piece world was significantly flooded during the Void Century by 200 meters. Now, filling the world with water seems to be a pretty good way to protect against any devil fruit user, but one theory actually involves seeing every single devil fruit power erased from the world. And again, there is only sporadic evidence to support this, but if you agree with the idea that the sea hates devil fruit powers for some reason, then wouldn't it make a lot of sense that if the devil fruit powers were taken away, that the sea might go back to normal levels, to their natural state? Which of course would be really sad for so many awesome characters to lose their awesome powers in the story at the end, but this is the kind of huge development that I could see happening during a climatic end to the One Piece story. We're not even close to being done with the crazy ideas though, because next we have an idea that the poneglyphs were once alive as well. That's right, I said it, and this theory was actually shared a while ago in the community, but the basic idea is that the poneglyphs were once one or many people, which were then transformed into stone long ago. Now the full theory is that Joy Boy himself was actually turned into stone poneglyphs, then they were separated and kind of distributed and hidden in different countries. Now, this could be possible since we do know that Boa Hancock's devil fruit can turn people into stone, Buggy's devil fruit can separate things, and Kuma's powers can easily send objects around the world. Or of course, it's very possible there was some other technology involved, but if this were true, it would explain why the poneglyphs can be heard with the voice of all things, even though they are technically inanimate objects. However, now let's once again return to the origin of devil fruits, because once again, Egghead Island has provided more juicy theories and possibilities. Because in chapter 1104, we learned that Kuma's body was essentially dead, but that he was somehow still functioning as a person. Now, Vega Punk speculated that this might be because the legendary Buccaneer race has some very special, still unknown characteristic that might explain everything, since Kuma does have Buccaneer lineage. And so with this information, some people have speculated that the Buccaneer souls could return from the dead and inhabit inanimate objects such as Kuma's dead body. And if that ability would be real, then it could once again be the final clue that we need to understand the true nature of devil fruits. Because if the Buccaneer souls can actually return from the dead, well, that just seems very much exactly like how the devil fruit souls get reincarnated over and over again as well. And so maybe it's just that the original Buccaneer tribe had incredibly special powers that have now been recycled as devil fruit powers ever since they were originally wiped out. And in fact, that very idea could also be the final clue to understanding Blackbeard's ability to eat multiple devil fruit, because we've known for a very long time that there was a connection between Blackbeard and the infamous pirate Roxy Xebec, who threatened to take over the world roughly 40 years ago. We do know this because Blackbeard named his own ship the Saber of Xebec, plus Blackbeard rules on Pirate Island, where Rox also once formed his legendary pirate crew. Now, we're still waiting to learn more about Rox, but one theory is that Rox's soul lives on inside of Blackbeard, and that is what allows him to eat multiple devil fruits. Makes sense, right? right? Multiple souls means multiple possible devil fruit powers, so if rocks had Buccaneer blood like Kuma, it's very possible that his soul could return and live on inside of Blackbeard. And again, that's just one of the mysteries we're still really waiting to solve about rocks and the ancient history of the world. Like, there's still so much we don't understand about the One Piece world, such as how are there tribes with natural elemental abilities like fire, electricity, or water, or how there has been a secret war in the One Piece world that started way before the Void Century, or which one of the 3 legendary ancient trees of the One Piece world actually holds the secret to devil fruits. And so if you haven't finished eating, cleaning, or maybe trying to fall asleep, whatever you've been doing while listening to this long video, if you need yet another 1 hour plus video about much more mouth-watering One Piece lore and a lot of other One Piece related stuff, you should really check out the One Piece lore iceberg I made a while ago right here. Worth watching, absolutely. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching till the end. I'd love to see you in the next one, and I can't believe you're sticking around till the end. If you have, honestly, what's a good emoji to put in the comments? Let's put what's like swim goggles. Put swim goggles, like diving stuff, like something water related, something iceberg related, ice cube maybe, ice cube or water goggles in the comments below, and let me know that you watched till the end. All right, thanks so much. I need to somehow save my voice now. Ooh.